record into the cloud instead.
Oh, there you are. It's on. Recording in progress. Lovely.
Fabulous.
Smashing. We've got some very good technology people online, so let's not embarrass ourselves too much.
No, I was just looking at the people that are joining and thinking, if I
I
get this
know.
tech wrong,
I
yeah, it's
know.
really embarrassing.
I know.
Really
It's bad enough with the
embarrassing.
pictures, let alone the tech going wrong.
Yeah, yeah, yeah. So
Go
I
for
will
it, Liz.
I will try and yeah, manage the tech, manage the waiting room, click the slides, click record. So we should be good to go. I'll keep an eye on the waiting room as we go through. But otherwise, we're here to say hello to everybody and welcome. Thanks ever so much for joining us. We've got about an hour this afternoon to talk about, and she will pop this up on the slides. Universal Evaluation Framework, a universal and freely available tool for developing your evaluation effectiveness. So Stella and I are leading this, and we'll talk a little bit about where this has come from. But my name's Liz Austin, if I've not met you before, and I'm Professor of Higher Education Evaluation. I'm currently Associate Dean Teaching and Learning in one of our colleges at Sheffield Hallam University. I'll hand over to you, Stella.
Thank you. Okay, I'm Stella Jones-Devitt and I work at Staffordshire University as a member of a thing called SCOLP, which is the Staffordshire Centre of Learning and Professional and Pedagogic Practice. I can't even remember. It's such a mouthful. Just call it SCOLP. It's a crazed mollusk, as we call it. So
Excellent.
move to the next slide, Liz, and then we'll crack on, I think.
Yeah, and just to say we're here kind of by invitation, I suppose, to the Evaluation Collective. So hopefully that's the kind of route that you found out about the session today. And we'll be posting all of the kind of resources from today's session on the Evaluation Collective website.
Thanks, Liz. So the rationale. Okay. So the first bit is, oh, she's fingers McGraw. You can put them all up, Liz. The first thing that we wanted to say to you is that we are hoping, and this is a bit, we don't think it's arrogant, but we're hoping it's going to be a game-changing tool, because by game-changing, there's nothing unique in it, but we're hoping that it's to build confidence in people. And linked to that is that it's to build confidence in people regardless of their evaluation skills or experience or starting point. So that's where we think the game-changing is, that we hope we've done that. And it's also, and this has come at, a bit of a cost collectively to us from the centre and from also support with QAA Scotland. It's free as a point of access tool. We think that's really important so that anybody can use it to plan or report evaluation projects. And that was really important to us, that we made sure that regardless of how much we develop this or not in future, that it was a free at point of access. Okay, Liz.
Okay, so just to say a little bit about the Universal Evaluation Framework and where that's come from. This framework that we're going to be talking to you about today is something that we've developed in conjunction with an evaluation of the 20 years of the QAA Scotland enhancement themes. So when we tendered for this work back in 2020, was it? We said that capacity building and leaving a kind of a legacy of capacity building was a really important point of our evaluation approach. So we wanted to create an output, something that we could leave the sector with, but also develop across the higher education sector more broadly. We recognised that there was a need for something kind of evidence informed, but we're also really keen to think about confidence. And the tool we're going to be talking to you about today is something which we hope in the iterative way that you can move through it to do some of your evaluation planning is a way that you can build some confidence through it as well. This is a kind of an early prototype. So from about 2022 onwards, we've been thinking about kind of piloting this. We've got loads of feedback from the sector. Lots of higher education providers has helped us along the way with that. And what you're seeing here today and what we'll demo for you is the stage that we've got to with this in this kind of prototype stages. So some of that review has really helped us to develop, to learn, to think about what the Universal Evaluation Framework tool can do for the sector. And we do hope to be able to continue to pilot it over the next couple of years. So as a result of this call today, if you go away, if you sign up, if you want to use the tool yourselves and you're interested in providing any feedback to us about how that's gone, then it's absolutely something that we want to continue talking to everybody about. Okay.
Okay, thanks, Liz. So we're going to be swiftly working through some of the questions that people have that we built together from people piloting and testing it. There's certain questions that they've always asked about it. So we thought we'll romp through a quick, what kind of questions would I have and how would we respond to it? We'll also do, which is the most important bit, I think, a live demo of what it can do and discuss its potential application. And there'll be opportunity, hopefully, for questions and wider discussion. I've put in the chat there because Liz can't see it. Please do post anything if it appears as it occurs to you. So that's where we're going. And yeah, over to Liz.
So you'll often hear Stella and I talking about the UEF. It is yet another acronym in the higher education sector, but we have called our tool, Open Access Free for All tool, the UEF, which stands for Universal Evaluation Framework. Universal is really important. We think that it is something that can apply to not only different levels of evaluation knowledge and confidence, but also different types of evaluative thinking. So if that's you're evaluating strategy, you're evaluating programs, interventions, whatever that might be, this evaluation framework can have some relevance to the work that you're doing. So that's what the UEF stands for. Next question.
Yeah, unfortunately, this is me. So if you provided your email, how's the information used? And I think this is important to know. So if you'd like to click the answer list for us.
Oh, yeah.
Be helpful. So as you can see there's a sign up for HGPS evaluationforall.org. And all we do is we ask you for a valid email and your name. We didn't want it to be hierarchical, where we wanted to know what your organisational position was, because we want it to be universal. It also, we also tell you when you sign up that we only use the information for purposes linked to UEF and evaluation related updates that might be of interest, I've put there, Liz. You can see interest. So we hope that you'll sign up for interest. What we won't do, and it's just important that you know this, we won't share your details with any other parties at Staffordshire, which is the host location, or with any other external parties beyond UEF related matters. We will always seek your permission if we envisage making any changes to information use. When you first sign up, sometimes with the way organisational emails are configured, it may go into your junk or spam email. So just to note that you might want to just do that. If you sign up and you don't see anything, check your junk email. We can't really control that at this stage, but sometimes it will go in there just to make sure that you're aware of that. Thanks, Liz.
Fab. And you might be wondering whether this is a kind of a sole venture, whether it's something you embark on this planning alone, or you can do that in a shared capacity. And absolutely, I don't think anybody should do evaluation alone. It should definitely be something which has multiple kind of voices and opinions within it. So we do have capacity to enable some kind of shared working with the Universal Evaluation Framework, and you can contact the administrators at SCOLP if you would like to do that, if you'd like to work on it collectively. And when you work on it collectively, there are also different views that you can customize. So it doesn't mean that everybody in the team that you might be working on together needs to have the same level of confidence or the same level of experience. There is a possibility to tailor that kind of shared approach and customize that in your ways of working. So if you are interested in accounts which can be shared and you can do some kind of collaborative work, then get in contact with the SCOLP administrator, Caroline, and she can set that up for you.
Thank you. And there's very timely because there's a couple of questions in the chat here about site codes. And just to reassure you, what's happened is that if you click on that answer list, so when you email, you'll see that there is now there are two boxes. For those of you who've already got logins, and some people have, you won't see this. You'll just go straight into your account. Sounds very complicated, but it isn't. Because we want to give people potentially more than one site. So you can have your own account, but you can also have an account that could be for a different project, or you want to share it with somebody. We now have this thing where it'll say site code, and Rona, I know you've mentioned that. So what happens here is when you contact SCOLP, you'll be given a unique site code if you want to work on something that's shared. The common site code, just for reference, is 2424, and that is for the main individual account that you will ever have. But we didn't want to get too much into the detail of that. The SCOLP administrator, Caroline's brilliant. She will just set it up. Once you've done that, you never have to keep going back to a different site code, unless you want to differentiate between your own account in 2424 and another one, which you can customize. You could call it project lived experience or whatever you want, but we thought it was important, and some of the feedback that we got was that it'd be great if people could actually see this and work on it, and even at different levels. So to do that, it's slightly clunky because we've invested as much as we can in it at this stage, but it will work. But you will get this new thing that says site code, and you'll be given a site code that will be generated, which you can then share with your colleagues so that they can also work on the same site. So I'm sorry that sounds very complicated, but it actually isn't once you've actually done this. And we do the backstory stuff on that. So once you've got your site code, it's fine. But we wanted to do that because we recognise that people wanted multiple sites.
Well, thanks, Stella. And we've worked through lots of iterations on this, haven't we, with our web designers, acknowledging that Stella and I are not the experts in web design and, and how these technical solutions work. But we hope that we've provided some kind of solutions to the things that people have been raising through the pilot, and that was certainly one of them, wasn't it? So hopefully we've got a bit of a solution on that one. The next question is around and we've had this asked of us before. I need a tool that helps me plan evaluations from start to finish. Can the UEF help? And yes, it can. The UEF follows a kind of a pattern, let's say, a journey through evaluation, of which you can come into that at any point. But it does take you through 4 distinct stages, of which we've called action zones. And these are the basis of effective evaluation. So if you followed it from start to finish through the UEF, it would take you through the stages that we think are relevant to effective evaluation planning. You can, of course, dip in at any point. So it might be that you already have aspects of evaluation in train, and you might want to, or you've got experience in certain areas and not others, but you can absolutely dip in and out wherever it is relevant. But these 4 stages take you through diagnose, which is the first stage, plan, which is the second stage, gather, which is the third stage, and reflect, which is the 4th stage. And throughout each of those stages, it will talk to you about the different things of components of evaluation that we think that it might be useful to consider. And these certain kind of activity points along the way. So there'll be little prompts, there'll be hints, there'll be bits of advice, questions raised at each of those activity points across those 4 stages that hopefully will take you through that evaluation journey. And it will look relatively linear, but we know that evaluation is a circular process. So when you get to your reflect stage, you might be thinking about going back through to that kind of diagnosis and planning for a future iteration. So it does have that ability too. And I think I'm just going to show you a little bit about what that looks like. So if you have signed up for an account, you might have come across a page that looks a bit like this. And if you haven't, now is the time to have a little sign up and have a little play. But this is the screen that you will arrive at. You will see across the bottom, you've got the stages of evaluation journey. So what we've called action zones. And in the middle, you've got a green squiggly line. And you will see that that green squiggly line relates to, with a key at the top, a newcomer route. And this is how we've articulated these kind of evaluation journeys based on levels of experience: newcomer, experienced, accomplished, and then kind of shared knowledge. And as it takes you through each of these activity zones, you can see that there are stages along the way, points along the way, which will ask you to consider and even jot down and make notes of your decisions, your thinking, areas to explore further. And I will demo this live in a second when we've gone through the slides. But there is different routes for experienced and accomplished that will look slightly different based on our reflections on levels of experience or levels of complexity potentially. So this is what a newcomer route to action point A looks like. And what you will see underneath the diagram is some prompts, some questions, and then there will be, as I will show you in a second, some ability to add comments to those as well. So that's what it looks like. We haven't called it a tube map, have we, Stella? And we weren't at all influenced by a tube map. But yes, that's the journey as it exists from our kind of evidence and inference. Okay.
Okay, so people told us that what they needed was something, when we piloted this, they need something that they can input directly into. So as you'll see when we now demo it in a few minutes, there are comments boxes within which you can put things across those 4 activity points, as you can see with that response there. So if you can use it as a planning tool, and we've got an exemplar where we show you, just for brevity of having to read through a load of stuff, we've just used it to say you can do this really simply, and you can just use it as a planning tool. But across the 4 activity points, your inputs in these boxes, because we'll ask you 3 questions at the end of each of these areas, like diagnose. They can be text-based, you can embolden, you can use hyperlinks and JPEGs. It's not as sophisticated as we would like at the minute. So for example, if you're using screenshots, you have to save those as JPEGs and then embed them. But it's a good starting point. So you can also start to develop an evidence base. Or as I say, you can purely use it to actually respond to things and thinking and go, oh, I need to do this, and I'll plonk it in there. And then you can share it with somebody else, and then they can write on your comments and go, oh, I think we need to tweak it in this way. It can be used as an iterative process as well. But the important thing is that you can save the evidence that you put in this tool, as well as working through it as a kind of learning and diagnostic process.
Fab. Okay. Another question that we've had around the UEF is how do I know which route to use? One of the kind of core principles of our design was that we didn't, we tried not to, and you may tell us that we have, but we tried not to kind of alienate through complexity of language at a really kind of accomplished highly experienced level. We recognize that that's not the reality of evaluation in higher education, and we needed to kind of tailor that slightly. So we have a kind of a quick guide that we've created. There's a user guide for the Universal Evaluation Framework. And this user guide goes through all of the questions that we've been talking about today, but it also includes a little matrix that will help you to or prompt you to think about your level of experience. So the suggested routes are newcomer, experienced, and accomplished. And there are also identifications of where you might want to think about stretch, so where you might want to stretch in different directions. But also think about the complexity of your intervention as well, because it might be that you're a relative newcomer to random control trials, for example, but you're very, very accomplished at developing theories of change, for example, or with particular complexity of an intervention, across a whole institution compared to a small single iteration outreach activity, for example. So they do differ. And you can use and you can tailor your kind of route on the basis of that. We did also have people who said, well, I'd quite like to be a newcomer, but I'm a bit nosy and I want to see what the experienced and the accomplished guidance looks like. And there's absolutely that ability to move between, or to have a look at what some of the guidance at a different level might look like as well as you're moving through that. Okay.
Hence, this is also part of it. What happens, there's some dots. If you just click on that, Liz, and we'll see. So each of the grey dots, stop there, has a rationale. So you can see just in that little box there, if you click on rationale just above diagnosis on the first route, this comes up as a little aide memoir and a prompt to you. So it'll tell the newcomer, identify the problem or issue you're trying to address, explore why it will lead to change using different forms of it. It gives you a prompt, a nudge almost. That's as near to nudge theory as I'm ever going to get. If you were doing this on a different route, if you click the next box, Liz, the experienced one, although you can't see it all, it gives you a different level of nudge. So it will recognise that maybe you're more comfortable with this. And then the accomplished one talks about all sorts of stuff. And we'll talk about embedding data. It'll talk about things like counterfactualism, things that we think newcomers might not know, but we still want them to be able to use it. So as you'll see in a few minutes, there are different levels, and you can move between the levels. But actually, what's really important on this route is that on the newcomer route, we actually have more activity dots than on the other routes, particularly in the early stages, and that's for 2 reasons. The first is because somebody might be less experienced in designing evaluations, it's even more important that we help scaffold people's learning so that they might be nudged to know the right things to include at the right time, so they can go about it a bit more confidently. And secondly, for those with experience, as in experienced or accomplished, they'll already know what they need to include in the planning stages at very basic level. So we didn't feel we needed to include those. We made an assumption that most people would understand that they might need to go through some processes, but we might not need to nudge them. We've only given them reminders of the most important things to consider so that they will automatically include these across the 4 stages. And you'll see that in a few minutes. So that was the reason why we've got, because people said, how come you've got more dots on a green route and less on the other routes? We also were very careful, and maybe we haven't succeeded with the language, as Liz said, because we didn't want to call people beginners. We thought beginner sounds a bit patronising. You just may be new to this form of working. And let's face it, all of us were new to the language of evaluation a few years ago. So we wanted to make sure that was there. Thanks, Liz.
Okay, the Universal Evaluation Framework is not just a read and digest tool. As Stella articulated earlier, there's opportunities for you to add information in various different formats. So one of the questions we've been asked is how do we get information in there, and what kind of information might be useful? Each activity point as you move across your evaluation journey will give you, and you think about those prompts, will give you a series of questions, and then there are text boxes or comment boxes where you could add your answers. So for example, when you get the first activity point is around theory of change, and it asks you those really pertinent questions about those fundamental starting points for theory of change. And you can start to add in the things that you've done around theory of change. So you can see here, just a little plug for Change Busters, the game around theory of change that we've said in this in this iteration that's what's happened. There's been some capacity building for this evaluation plan, and that's what's taken place. And each activity zone that you move through, you'll get a series of questions, and you can put in as much or as little information as is needed. There's no need to constantly be hitting save. It automatically saves as you move through it. So next time you go into your account, if you're logging in with the same account details, everything that you've entered into the boxes in each activity zone should be there. And there is also an opportunity to download that for reporting as well. Okay.
Thanks, Liz. We are romping through this because we know that you're desperately keen to see it in lived time. So we'll go through these very briefly. So can anybody else see the information? Click the answers, Liz, for us, please. So the first one is anything that you have, the way where it's your own site with that 2424, if you don't share it, then nobody else sees it at all. If you want to share it and you set up a different code, you can invite people, nominated people, to share that site with you, and then they can see what's on there. Just to let you know, though, we are going to monitor it over a 12-month period, but to reassure you, we don't see your content ever. What we see is whether you might have used it, okay, what the usage is, what the frequency of use, what the kind of broad time is. We just get a report that somebody's gone in, they've used it, or they thought, oh, this isn't for me, and after 2 minutes they've left, or they've repeated the use of it. That's all we see. And it's really important that you know that we are not looking at your generated evidence. We may also ask you to think about, after 12 months, we want to just have an iterative process where we might ask you, what's your main purpose for using the tool? Did it work? Did you get fed up with it? Has it been helpful? It won't be compulsory for anybody using this to answer the questions, but we will ask you to just help us to try and make improvements in it. Thanks, Liz.
Okay.
Nearly there.
Yep. In a similar way, we've been asked what happens if I need to go back into the UEF over time to access information about an intervention. It will always stay there unless for any reason you've cleared it and started again. So you've got the prompts, you've got the space to be able to upload that information through the comments boxes. You can kind of save that and you can download it as a resource for yourselves. But unless you go in and delete and start again, that information will be there. And if you wanted to work on multiple interventions at the same time, you can do that through multiple kind of login points. But whatever you've put in for that through that login and in that activity points will stay there until you decide to remove it. Okay.
Okay. Can you save the information somewhere? Off you go, Liz. Point away. So yeah, from me, you can save it all, as she said. You can click and save it as a PDF document. You can save each activity point separately and join it later. And as Liz already mentioned, if you're using one site only and you wanted to start again, you would just clear it out and start with a different project. But as I say, the potential is now there to add other sites as well. So you could work on something else without having to clear it all the time. Liz, the primary thing. You missed it. Help is at hand.
Sorry. Oh dear. Seamless, aren't we? Yes, the primary
Very.
thing is that help is at hand. I forgot the most important thing is that you are not alone in this, and that we've got the resources to be able to support people to sort out access or technical issues or any kind of further questions that you might have around use or function and so on. So that's either, keeping in contact with Stella and I or contacting the Sculp email address.
And finally, because we're dead keen on doing this. Yeah. So as you can see, we've got 2-year funding for it in its present guise. We would really like to collect some user case studies, the good, the bad, and the fabulously ugly, if that's the case. We can offer some wraparound CPD if people then find it useful. There's various touch points for us to get in touch with, and you can sign up. So I think, Liz, without further ado, we will try now and share what it looks like in reality. This is the bit where we need some Greensleeves music in the background while Liz just seamlessly, hopefully, shares it. I'll tell you when we can see it, Liz.
Yeah, bear with me 1 second.
While Liz is doing that, hopefully we've answered most of the questions in the chat as well. Any joy?
Yeah, I'm just navigating my around different screens. Bear with me.
Because we've got Sue online, and Sue will be looking disgustingly at us if we don't get our act together here at any moment now, Liz. No pressure.
It's coming, it's coming.
Hey, there it is.
Yay,
We can
there
see
you
it.
go.
Right.
Okay, right. I'm gonna put that onto newcomer. Can you see that? Has it gone green?
You can see it's gone green.
Perfect. Okay. So you can see hopefully that this is a screen that you enter if you get your account number and your login details. You can see in the top right-hand corner, if I just move people out of the way, you can see that this is Stella's account and there's your user guide. So some of the questions that we've been through today, all there in the user guide. At the top left-hand corner, you can see the level of experience. So you can, this is where you've got the opportunity to tailor this based on some of the conversations that you might have been having in your teams or the link to the user guide prompts. So we've got a newcomer, experience and accomplished. And I'm going to start on the newcomer here as well. There's also a little toggle as well. If you wanted to see all levels, yikes, you could see all levels. Okay. So just starting on the newcomer level, as we articulated, you can see that there are 4 activity zones to move your way through. And then there are these points along the way at which you'll be asked and you'll be prompted to think about, what you've learned, decisions you've made, and anything that you might be thinking is coming in the future. So you've got this point A here, which is theory of change. You've got B, which is protocol, C, which is impact, and D, which is lessons learned. You've also got, as Stella articulated, a number of grey dots along the way. Now, each one of these grey dots gives you a little prompt as to what you might want to think about at that point. So hopefully a little box has appeared in the middle of the screen. Thank you, Stella. And it gives you a little prompt here to think about your aims, think about your rationale, think about your kind of longer term impact and so on, and how that connects together. And each one of these grey dots along the way will do exactly that. So if you click on reporting, for example, it'll give you a nudge here right at the beginning of your evaluation to think about how your evaluation findings will be reported. A dissemination strategy, not something to be overlooked, absolutely. And that will take you all the way through to the kind of a point that we will reach at the end of this particular journey that should have taken you all the way through that kind of theorizing, the planning around what you might want to do, your data collection, and then thinking about the articulation of what you've learned. So all of those points along the way give you those prompts. And as Stella mentioned, if you change it to a different level, so if you go, it looks slightly different. There are slightly less grey dots, as we talked about, because they're we think that we assumed that there might be some known or some knowledge already of some of these areas. But the grey box act in exactly the same way. So same level of prompts, a slightly different tone to the language, I would say, in each of these. but moves along exactly in the same way with exactly the same points along the way. So if I just scroll down the screen slightly, you can see that we've got section A, section B, section C, and section D. These are all ticked. You see those little green ticks there, and that means that each of the sections has been completed. If you hadn't completed any of these, the tick would simply be missing. But this is to show that somebody, Stella, has completed the entire evaluation journey for this particular intervention. So the idea would be is that you would start at the beginning. You don't have to. You can start anywhere along this cycle. But for the point of section A, we started at the beginning. We started to think about rationale for our intervention or our program or our strategy or whatever it is that we might be thinking about. We move through aims, impact, outcomes, activities, outputs, inputs, and assumptions. And you'll see that this has some relevance for those of you familiar with theory of change. There is, the language is very similar. And then you've got, when you get to the end of there, you get to kind of point A. The idea is that you read this kind of overview prompt here, tells you what you should have done or have thought about by this point. And then you will see that you've got some opportunity to add in your reflections as you've been moving through this particular activity zone. So you can see here that the problem or the proposal here is around a buddying scheme, and there's a problem around level 4 retention rates, a bit of data in there, as much or as little information as you think is needed, or, it might be that this is connections or links to information elsewhere. You've started to talk a little bit about how we've started to develop thinking around theory of change, and then some kind of key points there around assumptions, things that you're thinking about and you're airing at the outset. And because each of those 3 questions have been completed, you get a little tick. Happy days. If you moved on to section B, you can just move across. You can see that this is taking you through to the protocol, and the idea is that you've moved your way through all of these grey dots before you've got to this point B. And this is asking you for your plan. So a protocol is just a fancy word for a plan, isn't it? That we use a set of key criteria, and we are identifying what it is that we want to do. And we're talking here about moving on from the theory of change, so going beyond thinking about what we think might happen to address our problem, and to what we might want to do about it and plan your evaluation and the intervention. And again, you can see here that we've got some prompts and things that we've thought about, particularly in relation to our protocol. So what are we going to do and how are we going to do it? Similarly for section C, you can see again, we've got some key questions here. We can see that we've got some hyperlinks in here, and more information about kind of appropriate methods and things that we want to do, and so on and so on. So the idea is that you work your way all the way through to that point of reflection, not to forget how important it is to learn from evaluation and really think about what those points have been for a future iteration. Again, there's some prompts here of things we think you might want to think about at that point, and then some key questions where you might want to record your thinking. I think that's pretty much it, Stella, but come in, yeah.
Oh, I was doing this, and I promoted myself to PVC. So I'm PVC at the University of Graphene here. And all I'm using this for, there's 2 reasons there's brevity in there. One is because we didn't want to show you loads of stuff, but you can use this as a planning tool, which is what this demonstrates. And it's a kind of almost notes to self, but talking to others. So you can see in some of the work that we've just shown you briefly, some very quick and dirty bullet points about we need to do this, we need to do this, we need to think about that. That's all good. But you can also use it, but we didn't want you to go through tons of stuff, as a reporting tool. So you could talk about what you'd planned. You could go into detail. Our rationale was this, and cut and paste that in. Our aims was this, to generate a report. So you can use it both to operate as an iterative tool, where I might go, oh, I'll send this to Becky and see what she thinks. And then Becky would look at this and she would go through those comments, go, not sure about that, and type something in. And you can use it as an iterative tool. Or you could put all the evidence in there of something you've done as a report and then save it as a PDF. So just to share with you, we've only just used this example for brevity. And it's about the application, I think, that's really more important, Liz. Thanks.
Yeah, no, absolutely. And I think what we thought at the point of of designing this and testing it with our colleagues in Scotland first, and then across the wider sector, is that a lot of the feedback that we were getting is that people knew that evaluation was important, that they recognized that this could be really useful and beneficial for their work, but they perhaps didn't know where to start. And all in its very most basic form, it's just a prompt to the key components of an evaluative cycle. And so it can be used in as Stella said, to plan and also to record. And I mentioned before about a way to download. You can see the little button there on the right hand side, that all of the content from section A, B, C, and D can be downloaded into a PDF, and that's where that will create it for you. Okay, I think unless you want me to click on anything else, Stella, I'll stop sharing the actual demoing of this.
Yeah, and I think just before you do, I think it's just to say that we think there's utility in this. So, for example, you can use this. We have got somebody testing this, a policy critique of this for us. We've got other people who are using it for very quite straightforward interventions, and then we've got a mix and match of all sorts, haven't we? Where we want to make sure that people can hopefully use it, but they can also upskill themselves if they wanted to have a go, like you said, Liz, and go, do you know what? I think I've done that enough. I might try the experience route and just see what the nudges are like there and whether I'm more familiar with that language. You can also do that, so you can kind of mix and match. And really, it's a nudge tool to get you to write effective evaluations, either reporting them or planning them. And I think that's it, isn't it, Liz? I think that's it in a nutshell, to be honest.
Yeah. And we were really keen that we wanted to, at the point of doing an evaluation, we also wanted, as I said at the beginning, to leave a tool for the sector to be able to take forward as well. And we think within the resources that we had and our capacity to develop this, we've probably taken this as far as we can. We know that it has limitations, but we also know that we think nothing else existed in this form. It's certainly prior to us starting to create this. So yeah, we hope there's some utility on it, and we just need lots of people to kind of try it out now, don't we?
Yeah, and I think I mean, we would love people to use this, and we've always had this thing. I mean, we've trialed it with about 10 Scottish providers, haven't we? And we've trialed it ourselves. We've tried it with different levels of staffing and different levels of experience. And we've tried to respond and react to some of the great ideas that they've gave us, one of which was, it'd be really great if we could share this. And we've tried to improve the reporting tool so that you can incorporate things like charts and things like that. But it is at the stage it's at. And I think to go beyond that in a couple of years, we'd need to think about where it goes. And it'll be one of those things, being perfectly honest, colleagues, it'll either grow and develop and people will use it, or it'll be one of those things where you go, oh, do you remember that tool that we tried for a while? It's one of those. And we're very excited about it, but we would be. I wanted to call it an evaluation constellation with the name Stell in there, but I'm afraid I was overruled. So I think it's time for any questions and anything anybody wants to say, Liz, really, to us, or thoughts or anything. There's some very positive comments, which I thank you all for in the comments. So there's a few minutes left, either for people to go and have the sandwich if they like, or to actually raise any questions or comments or observations. Jenny, I think you want to come in. By all means, feel free.
Yeah, just very briefly. First, I'm laughing. You won't know this, but I have a bet with a friend that where every time one of us sees graphene in the wild, the other one owes them a pint. So thank you for that. He now owes me another pint. I was just wondering, so you'll see when you look at the chat that Fran Hooley and I have been chatting about how popular this will be for something we call the Belonging Network at Manchester, where we're trying really hard to support people in embedding evaluation. And a lot of the people leading these activities are expert researchers in completely different areas, but really haven't researched intervention activities before. And so two things. I just wanted to apologize in advance if you end up with like 100 people from Manchester trying to sign up this week. And then I was wondering, when we're thinking about those codes, one of the things that we're trying to do in the network is buddy people up. So if they're doing a similar intervention, for example, there's quite a few people trying to work with Microsoft Teams as a tool for this kind of intervention or activity. We're trying to kind of get them together, both so that they feel like there's, people working alongside them, but also to help them align their evaluation a little bit so that instead of one activity with 12 people and one with 8 and one with 60, we can have all the individual activities, but also speak to this sort of, this sort of thing as a whole. And I didn't know they can do that outside of the tool, obviously, but I didn't know when you come to having that site number, if I should do some prep work with them around before you all rush to sign up, like find your buddies, because maybe you can all do it together, or whether this, it wasn't quite designed for that kind of thing or not.
Yeah, that's a really, really interesting question. Thank you. I would suggest that that's exactly what you should do. My other thing would be perhaps what you could do, and this is almost chicken and egg, really, to be honest. And yeah, graphene, I've mentioned it again. Hopefully you're well in there now. But I wonder whether you could actually set up your own site almost as a meta evaluation, and then get colleagues to it, because you can project it onto Teams. So that rather than them, I mean, you can use this across universities, by the way. So as long as somebody, and Caroline will explain this better than I can, but she does all the hard work in the background. But you can share a site code with anybody, as long as you've got somebody who's got a recognised email, you can share it with somebody in Manchester, in Sheffield, or wherever. So it can be cross-institutional. But I did wonder whether you could take this and almost do your own meta evaluation planning tool of this to go, so when we've got all this evidence, we need to bring it into this, and then go through that with people. So they've got, Liz and I've been banging on for ages, haven't we, Liz, about the helicopter view of evaluation when you've got complex things all feeding into a big scheme that really needs to happen. So I would invert it and do the helicopter view thing and then bring people to the table to see how that works with them, and then that also skills them to understand what the overarching objectives of all their work is, how it feeds in. Liz, have you got any comments on that? Because this is dear to our hearts, so thank you for mentioning it.
It is. I think it's, yeah, I think that you could go about it in any of the ways that you articulated, but I agree. Yeah, me and Stella have talked about this a lot, but having a point of which it all comes together. So some kind of coordination. So if you've got an institutional strategy, or you've got a kind of a thread that brings it together, somewhere where you can align those aims and objectives and outcomes, and maybe that's where your meta is, and then maybe there's opportunities to have individual accounts as well. But I think there's lots of potential, Jenny. So we're not worried about how many people sign up. That is fantastic. But if you do want to have a play around with it first, and then think, okay, how can we, how can this best suit our needs? Then just drop us a line and we can chat about it again. But there's lots and lots of different ways you could take it. Yeah.
No, that would be
Really,
brilliant. Yeah,
we'd
it
be
would be.
really pleased for people
Oh,
using it, Jenny.
no, don't worry. I mean, that is, I think you can take that as a given. And that idea that I could have a kind of overview, or myself and a few others could have an overview of this kind of work, is so exciting, because obviously I've been doing it a bit more informally, just like starting the network. So I've got my nose in everyone's business. But if there was like, a bit of overarching one that also supported them in moving forward with this kind of work, it'd be the impact on the student experience is huge, because it frees up a lot of anxiety around staff about putting these things in place and getting them evaluated. And then the more often we do it, obviously, the easier it is to embed this kind of evaluation into things. And people get really comfortable with that as a concept. So it's quite exciting. I'm very pleased. Thank you very much for all this.
And also, just to build on that, I mean, there's loads of evidence of what we've looked at that unfortunately what tends to happen, and I'm sure I've done this as well, that you have a grand notion of something, and then for whatever reason you seem to think everybody knows what that is, and then at very cold face level or grassroots level, of course, people just do what they do, which may or may not fit with the broader objectives, and therefore that tying it up and translating at the right level and supporting, giving agency to people to be able to do that is so important. So we'd be thrilled if you do it like that, but let us know, keep us posted. If it doesn't go well, we'll run under the covers, all right? Any more questions? Anybody else got any questions? Feel free. Sue Beckingham, you're very quiet. I'm worried. I'm going to bring you in. I'm picking on you. What's your thoughts on this, honestly?
My thoughts are great. My thought was, do you have any worked examples that you could share that, you know, here's a project that you looked at and this is the outcome and maybe the report that you wrote that went with it, you know, so you kind of see that journey from start to finish.
Yeah, we will have them in probably a few months because the people in the Scottish system have been using this and they've said that they will provide these with us. I mean, talk's cheap. When I come back to them, they might go, oh, but yeah, we should have some case studies because one of the things that we haven't been able to do, Sue and colleagues, is if we were really doing this fully, we would have a much more interactive kind of web space and we would have all these talking head video things and we'd have a lot of stuff on there, which is about interactive user guides, and also we would have loads of worked examples where people might be in, you know, podcasting and doing all sorts to actually help. So that's for the future, if and when we get any money to do it. But we should be able to share some worked examples. At this stage, of course, people are only just starting to see the outcomes from using it. So most of them have been kind of enhancement theme work that might take place over 1 or 3 years. So we've asked people to share their ideas with us, what's and all, on how it's gone and how it's reported. I mean, obviously, we could use it now and make up what the future looked like when we report it. But at this stage, we'd rather just say you could use it as a reporting tool, but more likely at this stage as a planning tool to use. But we will have some worked examples, hopefully, should be by the end of this year, shouldn't it, Liz? Because people will have been using it there in the Scottish sector for about a year. So
Yeah.
they did promise us that. So
yeah, and certainly the ones that we've kind of made up for demonstration purposes, we could share those just to see what
that'd be really
the
helpful.
examples of what
Yeah.
could go. So I think you've already PDF one of those, Stella, and I could finish mine. I've got 2 out of the 4 sections finished as an example, but they could be just little suggestions for what to put in each area. Yeah,
that's fine. Great question. Thanks, Sue. So
there's just
yeah,
a couple of comments in the chat about the recording and sharing it with colleagues. Yes, everybody that signed up and did so by email, I can send out a little prompt to say that the recording is available and it will be going up on our Evaluation Collective website. So we can put the slides up there as well. If we've got that PDF, Stella, we could maybe add that as an example, and the recording as well. So yeah, you'll all get access to that. Yep, share away.
Yeah, and also just to say that just before we wrap up, that this is part of the Evaluation Collective, and just to bring it back, and I know there's several Evaluation Collective members on here, it is about those principles of making evaluation as easy and as intuitive as it can be for whatever level you're working at, and recognising that, you know, we think everybody can do evaluation, and everybody should be involved who's interested in it, isn't it, Liz? That's a really important thing. So we've tried to match the principles of that with the tool as well. Is that fair comment?
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah.
Okay, so I think people might have the gift of 8 minutes time.
Yeah. Thanks, everyone. It's been really good to see everyone and talk to you about this. And we're excited about it. And it's really good to hear that back for us as well.
Yes, thank you.
Fantastic.
And tell us what's and all. We're not offended.
Yes. Yeah, absolutely.
Mhm.
Thanks, everybody.
Thank you
See
so
you
much.
later.
Bye
Bye-bye.
now.
Thank you.
Bye.
Bye.
Thanks for your time.